Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Investigative Truth Cold Case Missing. This is episode 2. My name is Pat Obashan. I'm a retired police officer, detective, and currently a private investigator. So, in my first episode, it was kind of an introduction to my channel, what I would like to do here on this channel, and really discuss cold cases and bring to light the cases of missing people, missing children, and taking a look at those cases and what has been done and what is new in those cases as I can. Like I said, I can't discuss everything about a case that I know, just simply because that would breach the integrity of that case, and I don't want to do that. I'm not willing to do that because there was always hope, and the last thing that you want to do is ruin something that could possibly happen, or if someone were to be charged and go to trial with something. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about why cases go cold. I think it's important for the public to know, professionally and personally, how investigators go through cases, especially when they're working a case that is cold or unresolved, and get you to understand some of the dynamics of working these cases, what the public expects compared to what is reality. Call that the CSI effect, really, because there's so much on TV today with unresolved cases, cold cases, just investigations in general, that the public has a perception that things happen a certain way. Like I've been saying for years, that a case should be solved in 1 hour with 3 or 4 commercials, right? Trial and everything. That's not going to happen. So what are some of the reasons why a case will go cold and eventually just sit there unresolved? The first part of that is that reliable evidence, viable evidence, has come to an end, basically. It's come to a dead end. And what is that type of evidence or that information? The first thing that would come to mind for me is witnesses. If you're in a case, involved in a case, from the very beginning, you're constantly out there, right, looking for witnesses, looking for people who know what happened or maybe lead you to know what happened. You're building up that probable cause. In cold cases, that viable information has stopped, meaning that maybe you have spoken to every witness that you possibly can speak with. Maybe all of the information that they have has been provided. Maybe information that they have hasn't been provided. But we can't force people to provide information. If people choose to lie during an interview, or if they choose to hinder an investigation, just choose not to get involved. That's not something that we can make happen, right? We can't make them happen. We can't create witnesses, we can't create statements, and we can't create quality information for a case. The same can be said for really evidence of a case. We can't create that either. And all of these things are very frustrating to investigators, as they are to family and friends. But with evidence on cold cases, and I want you to keep in mind too that with regard to missing persons, missing children, a case that such as Taj Narbonne or Deborah Ann Quimby over in Townsend, who disappeared in 1977. Missing children were not investigated or looked at the same way as they are today. We don't have the internet. We don't have it's not a pressing investigation to find a child, right? It is now. But then it was really, a runaway, unless there was other information, right? Such as it was an obvious abduction or something like that. And that's just not for cases like Taj, or, there are many, many cases where The initial police response was what it was because that's how it was done. We can criticize all we want. We can go back and criticize, why did the police wait that long? Why wasn't this done? Why wasn't that done? It does no good right now. And I'm going to get into that. But as far as evidence goes, if cases weren't looked at on the serious side of what they are and how we look at them now, well, it makes sense that, maybe evidence wasn't collected in that sense, or wasn't collected right away. And when that happens, then there's a problem with your evidence. Did you collect the right evidence? Was the evidence contaminated? Was it tampered with? Was it any of that stuff comes into play? So, we have witnesses, we have evidence, and also with evidence, if you don't have evidence on a case, then there's nothing really to look at in that sense. If we fast forwarded to now, right, if I don't have evidence from a case that's 30 years old or 40, 50 years old, then I have nothing to compare DNA to. And, if you look back, you don't have, or you've spoken to everyone, you have little evidence, no evidence, or maybe you have a lot of evidence and you reviewed everything, and evidence is also statements. But you've worked as far as you can work in the case, and then it kind of just comes to a halt. Now, when does that case officially become cold? I suppose when there's really nothing left to do in that case. And that's the mindset, has been the mindset of investigators through the years. I don't think it is that way so much now, but years ago it's like, what else is there to do? What can we do? Where in today's age we have different technology, we can search differently, we can, we know much more about interviewing, we know much more about evidence, collection of evidence, and all that stuff. But you have all of that. But you should never get, as an investigator, never get into the mindset that there's nothing more to do. I've never, ever, in my 23 years on Taj Nabon's case, ever said to myself, we have nothing more to do here. And I think that's important. But saying that, I can also say that, many investigators, there's a frustration level that hits, and that person probably walks away. And I'm not making anything up. I'm not, speaking out of line. It's just the truth. And that's why I'm doing these, is because I want people to understand in an unscripted way, without notes, no shirt and tie, the waterfall behind me and cars going by, right? That, in a perfect world, we would solve all of these crimes in that hour. That's what people are used to when they watch TV. You get DNA, it's back by the end of the show and the person's found guilty. All the evidence is there for you, unless you're watching a series and that goes on for on and on and on. But a great case in point is Taj Nabon series. 44 years, on March 31st of this year, 44 years ago, he disappeared at 9 years old. So it's been a long series, but for many people, mainly for me, I realize that. And I always welcome a different set of eyes, especially when you have a case that has been unresolved. I'm not going to call that case cold, though, because it's an active case and it has been active in a variety of ways. The other ways, some other ways, why do cases go cold? Like I said, evidence, statements, the inability to, test that evidence because it's not there. And also the inability of police departments to staff a cold case unit, even if that's one person. Family, friends, People don't like hearing that. Massachusetts State Police, they have cold case units. I believe they're all assigned to their respective district attorney's office. They do incredible work. There are men and women in there who are working multiple cases, receiving information, dealing with families that are frustrated, that are angry because there's no resolution to the case. But they are constantly working, and they're dedicated to working that way. When you get to Boston, Springfield, Worcester, right? I'm going to assume, I don't know, but they have people that are specific to those roles, to cold case roles, and can do those investigations. When you're talking about smaller cities or towns, the expectation that you're going to be dealing with a detective or someone that only does a cold case, you shouldn't expect it, because one, that person is not going to spend 40 hours a week working on a case that's 40 years old. And that is not to downplay the case. That is not to be disrespectful. I think, yes, if financially, right, a police department in a smaller city or a town could afford to have that person just strictly working on cold cases, then they would absolutely do it. They would do it right away. But you would have someone that was really just hanging around much of the time. I still work on the Taj case. Now, granted, I'm retired. I have my own small business of investigations. I look at Taj's case as I can. I do not dedicate 40 hours a week toward it. I don't dedicate 40 hours a week toward any of the cold cases I know. So being able to staff and have resources toward cold cases varies amongst departments. What I want to kind of move on to, and that's, I wanted to go into the frustrations personally and professionally with cold cases, but what I'm going to move over to now is, I think, extremely important. And that is, social media and its pros and its cons when it comes to unresolved and cold case investigations. So many of you may follow different pages. There's, a page out there for the Brittany T case in Brookfield. There's a page out there for a case like the Sandra Birchmore case, right, out in Canton, Stoughton, wherever she was. And it doesn't matter what page it is. I think people who build those pages up are amazing people. They're bringing light to a situation that should have light shined on it. And they put that information out there, they put it in there, and the pages grow. That's also an amazing thing. But what happens is this. That page goes from concern and sharing and everything else to opinions, speculation, and it gets, accusations in some sense. Now, I'm going to talk about strictly missing people here. I'm not going to talk about something that is necessarily outwardly criminal or whatever, but, people start accusing, people start mentioning various things about the cases or people around those people without really truly understanding it. And, I really believe that's a dangerous thing. And the first reason that is my belief is this. The intention of the page was to get it out there that was that person was missing. The intention of the page was to get people to see it, and if you know something, right, say something. And what it becomes is just a mudslinging social media site. You can look on any page that's talking about a case. I'm not going to point any out. I have reached out to several administrators of these pages, to just express my concern of where it's going. And, all of these administrative pages understand that, but it gets out of control. So that, I think takes away from the reasoning behind these pages and kind of muddies the waters when it comes to what's truly out there. And, until you're in the game, until you're doing the investigation, sometimes people don't understand that, well, maybe there are no fingerprints. Maybe there is no DNA. Maybe there is no cell phone data. Maybe people have been cooperative. Maybe people did know that there was a serious situation going on and tried to do their best. Maybe there was a reason why a person behaved the way that they did prior to something happening, someone disappearing. Those are all of the things that are within a case that aren't necessarily shared to the public, and for good reason. That's the integrity of the case. I hope this makes sense to everybody. But, at the end of the day, on all of these pages, even on this channel right here, and what I'll talk about in the future, I know that Taj's relatives will most likely view it. I know that someone else's relatives might view something that I'm speaking about, or friends, right, of people. I'm always cautious to do that because no one ever likes to hear, especially when nothing has been proven, that, this person did that or this person. It's all speculation. It's not a fact. And for those people who know me, my life really is fact and fiction. Speak to me factually about a case. And I just within the past 6 months, had the opportunity to, actually it happened a couple times, the opportunity to speak to someone who had information, who wanted to present it, to law enforcement. And I love outside researchers. I love people that aren't involved in law enforcement, but they are incredible researchers. I give them all the credit in the world. They're extremely smart. But sometimes people don't know how to present information that they have found, that they've researched, or, a possible scenario of what might have happened. And it's very important to present that in a certain way. And if you don't know how, you may lose the law enforcement attention that you should actually have. Again, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I just made my post recently on Taj's 44th anniversary coming up. One thing about social media, when you look and you see that you've had 25,000 interactions with people on a post, it means it's getting out there. Very, very important. But from that post that I put out there, I had numerous messages behind the scenes of people who had questions or suggestions of where to search, or other suggestions. I never dismiss any of those unless we've already done it. And I'm satisfied that what we've done has been exhausted. So I always appreciate that. And all the people that reached out to me were extremely respectful in that sense. Not, why haven't you done this or why haven't you done that? Saying, have you ever checked down here? I'm familiar with this area. And I had a conversation with someone and, taught them a few things on the layout of what we were talking about, of that land, which I never knew. And, when that person walks away satisfied knowing that their information makes sense. So, when people, and you can even see it on some things where people will say, why hasn't this person been interviewed? Why hasn't this person been arrested? It's called probable cause. That's why people don't get arrested, is there's a lack of probable cause for the most part. But, are you going to talk to this person? Are you going to talk to that person? Yes, that is, they are key players in an investigation, especially in an investigation that we re-investigated. So we started from scratch. We've talked to a lot of people in Taj's case, but we continue to look for more people to talk to. And that just happened to me last year. I had someone reach out to me who had some information. They didn't feel like their information mattered. I can tell you this, the information that they provided allowed me to put more focus in a specific area because of what they shared with me. And that information and that witness, very, very good witness, having to do with prior to, Taj's disappearance, really kind of right up to it. But that conversation with that person led to 3-4 other interviews of people who had never been spoken to. So information matters. Social media sharing matters. What doesn't matter is when people just talk out of their what with their suggestions or assumptions of what happened. And that is really with, if someone's assuming about witnesses or a suspect, a person of interest, the parents of a missing person, anything like that, right? I wish, but it's never going to happen, but I wish people would hold their line when it came to, hold their place when it came to their opinions on things with these cases. So that's kind of off the beaten path, but I am very proud of the people that I know that do cold case work, unresolved homicides as well, that aren't part of the law enforcement family, yet they kind of are. I have a lot of respect for them. They put a lot of time and effort in. I really do wish that they had a bigger place in the overall investigations of cold cases. I truly believe that. I believe that, if a case is so old that, you should be able to bring outside people in. I'm not saying that you can't. I think that anyone that does these cases realizes that, you just have to be careful with how you pick and choose those people, because especially if you don't know them or you haven't worked with them for a few years, it can get messy, or people can have an opinion. That is, again, one of the most dangerous things is when you put the blinders on, when your focus is only in one area of a case and you go to that belief. You go to your opinion. Investigations, for the most part, police work are factual based, meaning most times, right, police investigators are looking for the facts of a case to build up a case. Opinions or, I think, really does not have much to do with an investigation, although that may come up. Someone might have a suggestion or, professional opinion on what happened. I have a lot of personal opinions on cases, and I have a lot of professional opinions on cases. Professional, more so how investigations were done. My personal comes from, when I can let go of all of the facts that I know about a case and take a look at a case and say, this is what I think happened. But on the professional end, I can say, I can't say that this happened. It's hard to determine, say, for missing people. And there was just a case. I think the guy was from New England or from California, and they like 60 years old or something like that, but through DNA, through like Ancestry or one of those, right? Someone runs DNA and finds somebody that had been missing for like 60 years. Person just went on and lived a completely different life starting from when they were a child, right? So it's amazing. So when you're working a missing persons case, it's extremely difficult to say with certainty that that person is dead when you don't have anything to prove that that person is dead. That's my example with that. I hope that all made sense, but I would like to think of a case like Taj as unresolved, although it is referred to as cold case. The title of my channel is Cold Case Missing, right? It could be resolved, could be unresolved missing, but it's cold case missing. That's what I chose. But when you're active on a case, when you're getting new information, even if that is, the smallest of information, that case is still active with the hopes of solving it. So just briefly, some of the frustrations. Professionally, I mentioned some of those where, you wish that you had evidence to test, but you don't have any. You wish that you look back on reports and say, why wasn't evidence collected? Or where is the evidence now, right? If it's in the report, where is it? Where did it go? Is it lost? Was it sent out for testing and never returned? There's a frustration with that. There's a frustration working cold cases with how cases were worked back then. Again, a lot of old cases, depending on who did them, and I've reviewed many, many cases, but how good of a writer, how good of a report writer was the person, how good of an investigator was the person, how well do they put their words and their knowledge into writing into a report. And I forgot who told me this, but someone once told me, and I teach this to my law enforcement writing students, is that when you're writing something in an investigation, in a police report, you're writing for the future, especially when it comes to cases such as a missing person. And if law enforcement remembered that, and if they, knew that 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, maybe they would write differently. I'm not sure. It's all an individual experience for that investigator. But you're writing for the future. So everything that I've done in the past 22 years for the Narbonne case needs to be passed along, right, to the next investigator who will work it. That's another frustration, is that you would hope as an investigator that when the time comes for you to step away, and some investigators do step away, or God forbid you pass on and you have all this information that has nowhere to go, if you don't have someone walking behind you, following your footsteps in a case, all of those years are gone. And it's very difficult to work a case where several people have touched the investigation, maybe spoke with people or searched areas, and there's no documentation to it. Again, that's something that happens or can happen in cold cases. Now, I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse and that unsolved and cold cases are done wrong. That's not true. There are incredible cases out there that are really strong. They're just looking for that one break. They're looking for that one piece of information. A lot of them are looking for, possibly, right, looking for someone out walking on a trail or walking through the woods off of a trail that comes across a bone. And, they're smart enough to say, I'm not going to show this to, a friend of mine who hunts or someone that thinks that they know all about bones. I'm going to bring this to the police station and then hope that the police station takes that seriously and measures it in situ as is to scale, takes a picture of it and sends it off to the medical examiner's office or to someone who can identify that bone. I can tell you for certainty that even locally, we've had cases where, one I'm thinking of, I'm not going to mention where, but where a person found a bone. The bone was thrown into a trash barrel and said it's from a deer. And, not long after that, the dog found the remains, the human skull of the person missing. So we can never assume that we know everything. And as many times as I've gone to schools and on death investigation, cold case investigation, and, being able to look at bones and stuff, I wouldn't be able to tell you where a bone came from unless the animal was there with it or the person. So that's just my honesty. There are frustrations that come on the professional side. And the biggest one for me, and I'll talk about this when I start getting into the Narbonne case and how I got involved, and when I met Eunice and Louis Narbonne, Taj's grandparents. They have since passed on, his grandparents have. And that was so heartbreaking for me, so frustrating for me. It made me feel that I had all these years that I've been failing, that I've been doing something wrong. It took me a little bit to realize that I'm not doing anything wrong. This case is a very tough case, and we're still working on it. And I just lost, two people that I used to reach out to and that I met, and I'll share that story. On the personal side, you deal with families, you deal with emotions. You might deal with families that are angry at law enforcement for whatever reason. A lot of times that comes from frustration of feeling that nothing is being done. I understand that. I understand where a family is coming through. I don't understand the feelings of having lost someone and not knowing where they are. But there is a frustration and really, a sadness and an anger that comes from families that just want answers. And I understand that. And I've always kept that in mind, which I will discuss in episode 3 as well. So, we personally get frustrated and people will walk away from it. And it will stress people out. And, the best piece of advice that I ever got from, my dear friend, Dr. Anne-Marie Myers, who has assisted me with the Taj case, is this: when you're overwhelmed with cases, it's okay to close it. It's okay to put it away, put it someplace where you're not looking at it, and when you're ready, come back to it. Now, that's not 2 years away, but if you can put it away for a month, the case is unresolved. There's nothing there at the moment. Why don't you come back to it when your mind is clear about it and you can start properly working while at the same time taking care of yourself? And honestly, I can say that when people respond to different things on social media about, the lack of effort, I cannot tell you the amount of hours that I know people put into cases that do it because they care, because they want a resolution for a family, and they do not get paid for it. That is something that I've been criticized for. Yes, criticized because I choose not to take the money for these cases. And I choose to surround myself with people who are going to lead me in the right direction with a case and keep me in that direction as they are right beside me working on these cases. So I hope this episode 2 made sense to you. I want you to hear the background of these cases or how we think, and I'm going to bounce back and forth with that. I think it's only fair so you understand that. In episode 3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how I got involved in the Taj Narbonne case. I'm going to share with you meeting his grandparents for the first time, and kind of the pushback we received when we suggested reinvestigating this case. I think they're all important. I'll see you in episode 3. Thank you.